And welcome to another ETOA webinar in our digital education series. My name is Rachel Reed, Head of Communications here at ETOA. Today we're going to be discussing social media and working with influencers. I'm pleased to have alongside me here Amber Hoffman of WIT Media, who will be leading the webinar today. WIT Media are one of our newest ETOA members, and we welcome you, Amber, and we look forward to hearing your expertise this morning. Before I hand over, a few practical points. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll send you the link to that afterwards for your information. And you can submit questions at any time using the question function on your screen, and Amber is happy to answer those as we go along. If we don't get time to cover all the questions, Amber can get back to you individually after the session is finished. Great. So without further ado, I hand over to Amber, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Welcome to Working with Influencers to Promote Your Brand, Looking Beyond the Numbers. I'm Amber Hoffman from WIT Media, and in this webinar, we're going to share some of our social media marketing tips around how to work with influencers to promote your brand. First, I'll introduce myself and WIT Media, and then we'll walk through three important concepts on how to create successful influencer marketing campaigns. Of course, this doesn't cover absolutely everything you need to know, which would take a lot more than 45 minutes. And I know that we are a few minutes behind schedule, so I do hope that those of you who can stick around for a little bit longer, that would be helpful. But hopefully I will get the juices flowing to just think a little bit more creatively about how you can work with influencers. So first, a little about us. I'm Amber of the culinary and luxury travel blog With Husband in Tow. Together, Eric, the husband, and I have traveled the world working to promote hotel properties, restaurants, travel brands, and destinations. We've worked with tourism boards in the US, Europe, and Asia on influencer and content creation campaigns to promote their destinations. Our niche is food, wine, and luxury travel, and there are days where I feel like we've seen it all. We've stayed in everything from budget hostels to the Ritz-Carlton to everywhere in between. While traveling to over 70 countries, we've even dined on street food at some of the top restaurants in the world. But while traveling, we became frustrated with how many of the travel brands we partnered with, both big and small, failed to take advantage of the investment they made in working with us as influencers. We quickly realized they needed help in realizing the enormous benefits of social media, not just from working with us as influencers, but even at a more basic level. We saw even some of the largest brands making some elementary errors in their social strategy or fail to have a strategy at all. So we created WIT Media to provide actionable steps to help travel brands increase revenue through their social media channels. So we are social media consultants and trainers who specialize in helping travel brands transform their social channels to drive an increase in bookings and sales. And over the last few years, WIT Media has worked with managers and staff to improve their social channels and to reach their marketing goals. We've worked on consulting contracts, coaching programs, and have provided in-person social media training. Also, we continue to create content for travel brands and destinations as part of our travel blog With Husband in Tow. So first, to just talk about, Okay, so first, sorry, we're having a little bit of a technical issue. I think this is the first time for our new software here. So we're all a little trying to figure out how to use it. So I have a few main goals for this webinar. One is for you to get to know me, both as With Husband in Tow and as WIT Media. Second, obviously, is to talk about influencer marketing. But third, I also want to get to know you a little better to help understand your experience working with influencers. So before I jump into influencer campaigns, I just would like to try to see if I can find my slide. There's goals. Okay, so have you worked with influencers or bloggers before? That's pretty much my first main question. Now, we'll talk in a moment about the definition of an influencer, but this can include travel or lifestyle bloggers, YouTubers, Instagrammers, but generally doesn't include traditional media, journalists, or traditional PR firms. So if you could just go ahead and pop anything into the questions just to let me know, yes or no, whether you've worked with influencers before, and it would just help us to get to know you a little bit more. I don't think we have the questions on the screen so that we can see. Let's see. Questions. Okay, so we do have some folks, thank you, starting to answer the questions now that I can see them. Yes, mainly with Instagrammers. So that's great to hear. But I want to ask one more question. Some people have worked with both influencers and bloggers. But what I'd like to do is continue to please answer the questions. But in the meantime, I want to also ask a poll. Just on a scale from 1 to 10, how successful were you in these campaigns? Let's say that rating it as a 1 would mean it was nearly a disaster and made you want to cry. Hopefully that's not too many of you. Or if you've worked really well with them, a 10 would be that you should have or have won awards for your influencer marketing campaigns. Generally, most brands will fall somewhere in the middle, and certainly don't be shy. We already have some people here giving themselves 5s, which is probably why you're here today. The good thing is that so far we're not seeing people with 1s, so no one's left an influencer campaign crying in the corner, and so that's actually pretty good to hear. So go ahead and continue to let me know how you've worked with influencers. And what you rate yourself, and I'll just keep watching those questions as they come in. And also, just a note about the questions, please feel free to ask any question that you have. If I don't get a chance to respond to you during the webinar, then I will certainly contact you afterwards to give you a more thorough answer, because I do want to make sure that we get through everything. And I'm just going to go back 2 or 3 slides here to just talk once again about influencer campaigns. I mean, this is really the reason why we're here today. So we joined ETOA as WIT Media, as our consulting company. But Rachel and the other folks here quickly realized our unique benefit to members, both being a social media consultancy and travel influencers ourselves. So they asked me to speak today about this topic of how to work with influencers. And so today we're going to cover 3 main topics. First is selection. This covers how to select the right influencers for your brand, what numbers matter, and what numbers are real. Second is budget. And this includes how to make the most of your budget when working with influencers and content creators. Last, we'll talk about how to prove your investment in social media and influencer campaigns is worth it. And you will see that sometimes I end up steering clear of the phrase ROI, and there's a reason for that. So I'm going to flip through these slides that are out of order from the way I wanted to do them, so sorry about that. But first, what I want to do is really define what is an influencer, because this name and what it means has really changed over time. So the word blogger was originally used in the travel industry for people who wrote personal blogs that talked about their travel experiences. Over time, professional travel bloggers started to do more. They provided more concrete advice and travel tips on particular destinations. They offered hotel reviews, product reviews. And part of being a professional travel blogger is using social media to market those blog posts. When we started with Husband in Tow, we became a jack of all trades. Now we have a Facebook page, 2 Instagram accounts, 2 Twitter accounts, Pinterest, and a YouTube channel, in addition to the blog. So we sort of do it all. But then came the word influencer, which originally referred to people who were maybe YouTubers or Instagrammers, people who have influence over other buying decisions through social media, and often a lot of them tend to focus on one channel. Now, influencer is used more broadly for people who have followings on social media or through their blogs. It's more of a catch-all. But the question then is, what is an influencer? And how can you tell if that so-called influencer has any influence at all? And we'll get to that. But within the blogging and influencer community, the trend is now to sort of think about travel bloggers as more content creators. The professional bloggers are those who create great content in one way or another. Blog posts, photos, videos, podcasts, you name it. We've worked with tourism boards to create ebooks, traditional books for Amazon, sponsored podcasts, Instagram takeovers, and more. So think about it this way. Traditionally, travel brands, tourism organizations, hotels hired PR firms to get their message out. And they hired professional photographers and videographers to create content for them. Now, bloggers, so-called content creators, can do all of that for them. So we like to point this out to our social media clients to help them think a little differently, particularly hotel brands who not only need to create content for their website, but also need 52 weeks of social media content each year, including video. So rather than using in-house staff who might not have the right photography or videography skills, or consistently hiring professional photographers or videographers to create content, you can use bloggers and influencers to create that content for you. You can pay them for that content, often at a lower price than hiring a professional photographer, but that they also are reaching into their audience as influencers to help promote your destination. And we call this sort of a twofer. This concept will underlie our discussion today about influencers, which I will kind of refer to as influencers, bloggers, content creators, all under one term. So next I want to talk about, before we get into our tips, I'm sure many of you have seen this before, it's the buying cycle. It basically starts with awareness. This is when the person becomes aware of a product or their need for a product. Then they move into research and then comparison and then eventually purchase. Now, I think we can all agree that travel purchases are different from purchasing a car or a computer or a pair of shoes. With many online products, someone can tear through this buying cycle super quick. I mean, imagine a fashion blogger who sends out a few tweets about the newest pair of Manolo heels. It's hot for this season. She makes her followers aware of what is new, and then her followers may quickly move ahead to purchase within days or within an hour. But travel is different. Oftentimes, the awareness phase is very long, where people are inspired to visit a destination, and it might take months or even years for that consumer to actually research and ultimately book. This is one way that working with travel bloggers is different from bloggers in other industries and comes into play when we talk about making an investment in working with bloggers, particularly how do you prove that ROI. So we're going to come back to this buying cycle a couple times during the webinar. But now let's go to the first of our three main topics: how to select the right influencers for your travel brand. And so what I want to start with is talking about the quality of the work that can be done for you. Many brands, particularly large travel brands, focus on the number of social media followers or the number of page views on the blog as seen by Google Analytics. Some of this can be telling and certainly important. But others, sometimes these numbers aren't necessarily what they purport to be. So just last month, there was an article in Ad Age that showed a study focusing on sponsored Instagram campaigns from some of the largest companies in the world. The net from this report was that over a month of all of the Instagrammers that the Ritz-Carlton worked with, when you looked at the following of those Instagrammers, about 78% of the followers for those accounts were fake. Fake accounts, bots, and we all know what's been in the news recently about this problem in social. The point here is that you need to look beyond the numbers. You need to look beyond the number of Instagram followers when deciding to work with a content creator. And I'm happy if anyone would like to see that, that report and that article, please certainly email me, and I'm happy to share that. Because the point here is that you want to focus on quality over quantity. Look at their recent blog posts. Look for typos. Look for storytelling. Are they sharing a mess of 500-word posts? Or are they educating people, telling a story, digging in deep? Look at the quality of the images they're sharing on their blog. Is their blog enjoyable to look at as a consumer? Look at the comments to their Instagram posts. Are there a lot of generic emojis and comments like cool or nice work? That could mean that bots are at work. So it's important to look beyond the numbers, because just because someone has 1 million Twitter followers or a few 100,000 Instagram followers doesn't necessarily mean they have influence over those followers or that they get results for your brand. Second, we tell our clients to look for professionals. Ask the content creator for a media kit, testimonials, referrals. Are they a member of the Professional Travel Bloggers Association? Yes, there is such a thing, and bloggers have to pay to become a member. So that's a great way to tell if they're really willing to invest in their career. Are they members of the Society of American Travel Writers, the British Guild of Travel Writers, or other professional organizations? Is their overall tone of their blog and their social channels inferring that all they want is free travel? Or are they acting professional? Now, this is more of a sniff test. You sort of know it when you see it. If they only have Instagram and their photos are, well, a lot like this one on the screen, and this is not me in the pool. This is the sort of the typical image of a girl in a pretty dress holding a hat on her head, or a girl enjoying the pool. I mean, those can be inspirational Instagram shots, but are they helping to actually drive bookings and increase revenue for your brand? If they're Instagrammers and there's really no website to back it up, that could also be a sniff test telling you that it might not be the right kind of influencer for your brand. So when doing the sniff test, you're looking to determine whether it's a good fit for your brand. That Instagrammer in the pretty dress, is she a millennial with a largely millennial following? When you are a luxury brand or a brand that caters to Gen X and baby boomers, is she a good fit? You don't want to work with a budget blogger for a luxury hotel. Solo backpacker when your goal is to promote family travel. Are you looking for growth in travelers from Europe or the US or Asia? Where are their readers and followers? But the sniff test also helps to determine if they can help tell your story. Are they storytelling on their social channels, or just posting a sunset image that says another beautiful sunset? Maybe they can't actually tell the story that you want to tell. So for this first topic, what's the key takeaway here? And it really is to look beyond the numbers. Think about what content the influencers are creating. What story can they tell? How do they fit with your brand? And don't be afraid to work with micro influencers, ones that have smaller following, but perhaps a lot more engaged following. So now let's move on to the next topic, how to make the most of your budget when working with influencers and content creators. We all know budgets are tight, and in particular for public or private, public-private partnership tourism boards. I mean, everyone needs to show the value of what you're doing, but sometimes tourism boards also need to be accountable for taxpayer dollars. And so we understand that that's important. So what are the ways that you can work with great content creators to get the most bang for your buck? So first, remember the idea of influencers versus content creators. Can you use the blogger to create great content for you, whether that's written content, photos, videos, so that you don't need to hire a professional photographer separately? This is a great way also to show ROI, because instead of focusing only on influence and engagement, you can always report to your higher ups that they also provided us 10 high resolution images or created 5 30-second videos for us. That's always something that you can hang your hat on so that you know that you're at least getting something for your money. Now, my next topic might seem like it's coming out of left field and be a little off subject, but I think it's important because this is often the biggest stumbling block between creators and brands being able to work together. How to get the influencer to your destination or to your hotel. Obviously, working with bloggers who are traveling to your area can cut down on costs. But particularly if you're not working on a paying campaign, if you ask a content creator to fly themselves in, you are essentially asking them to pay out of pocket to promote your destination for you. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to fly people in from California or Australia, but flying them in from London or Paris or Barcelona might not be too much to ask for a big campaign. So we like to say, and we like to recommend that perhaps setting an annual budget that can help cover train or flight costs for larger campaigns is a good idea. We also know that it's difficult even for tourism boards to work with airlines to get sponsored flights. It's becoming increasingly more difficult. But if you plan ahead, you might be able to use Ryanair or another low-cost carrier to fly influencers in on the cheap. Get a good deal. You will most likely get higher quality, more professional influencers if you do this. Or build relationships with some of the national railways. For example, Rail Europe and AVE in Spain, they work with influencers on their own. So perhaps partner with them to help get people to your destination. So the next topic is a big one, and it's impossible for me to cover this. I could spend hours on this topic alone. Do you need to pay influencers? As an influencer myself, of course, I want to say yes. This is my job, it's my profession, it's my business. And if you want top influencers who produce top content, it's better to set aside a budget to offer payment. But think about what you are offering payment for. Are you offering payment for 10 Instagram posts with a short shelf life and no way to really link to your brand or destination, thereby just creating awareness in our buying cycle? Or are you paying for 3 evergreen SEO optimized blog posts plus social promotion plus 10 high-res images that you can use on your website or social channels? Those evergreen posts can reach people when they are in the research and buying stage of the buying cycle and are more likely to offer a better return on your investment. For example, we worked on a paid campaign for a tourism board 2 years ago. I currently have 3 blog posts I wrote for that destination in my top 20 blog posts, some of which are ranking on the first page of Google for some keywords. Now, this campaign continues to bring awareness to the destination 2 years later, which you often can't say for an Instagram post. I also want to take 1 minute to talk about this concept of paying influencers, because many brands believe that influencers are being paid in experiences, and sometimes that's the case. I'm happy to not be paid for a trip to Antarctica or the Maldives or other really high-end experiences that I might not be able to otherwise experience myself and bring to my readers. But when it comes down to it, oftentimes bloggers are promoting a destination they would not otherwise visit or an experience that they would not otherwise take. And please remember the time it takes not only to have the experience, but also all of the time it takes to create and promote and market the content, plus all of the time it took to build the blog, the following, the social channels, the reputation, the cost for hosting and all sorts of IT and developer fees, the equipment, it all adds up. And if bloggers never get paid for their work, they can't cover the rent. So for professional bloggers, it is their business. And to get great quality work from top bloggers, yes, they do need to be paid. Think about it this way. Would you ask a PR firm to promote your destination and provide your brand exposure to an audience you would otherwise not reach and ask them to work for free? And that's something we do like to talk about. So here is our sort of key takeaway. Overall, it's really time to think about your budget and how to start allocating more budget to influencer campaigns instead of traditional advertising. Perhaps think now about how to reallocate your 2019 budget to take advantage of these opportunities to reach different audiences. And we do have a question. When paying influencers, is it acceptable to specify what you get in return? We've had difficulty with paying for influencers, and they would not guarantee coverage for all of us, so couldn't agree. That's actually a really great question. We rarely enter into formal contracts, even for paid assignments. Generally, the email that goes back and forth is enough to memorialize what the agreement is. Sometimes I feel like it's hard as an influencer to guarantee coverage for everyone that was covered or provided an experience on the trip for a couple reasons. Sometimes, particularly with tourism organizations, you're doing a campaign around a particular niche and they try to stick something else in that might not appeal to my readers. So it's often hard for us to try to get all of that stuff in. One way to make sure that works is to make sure you have conversations about what the experiences are so that they fit within the niche. Sometimes experiences are bad, and the brand actually probably doesn't want the blogger to write about it, and that's something that should have a conversation during the trip or just after the trip. So I think it's really up to the arrangement that you have with the blogger. Generally, me as a professional, if I'm sort of expected to guarantee particular coverage, I always say, let's say they request 3 blog posts. When it's a paid campaign, I said, I will write 3 blog posts, but I can't guarantee exactly what will be included in those blog posts because you really don't know until you're on the trip what the story is going to be. And so there are ways that you can kind of get around it. But I do think that it's really important to ask and at least the blogger can be upfront with you about what they can guarantee and not guarantee. So that's actually a great question. Thanks. And so one more sort of key takeaway here. Again, think about quality over quantity. Is it better to work with 5 or 10 quality influencers in a year who are creating great content for you and telling a great story than to work with 5 to 10 low quality influencers a month on campaigns that are not worth anyone's time or effort? Or even better, try to create long-term partnerships with content creators. Perhaps think about creating brand ambassador relationships with the best bloggers you've worked with in the past, or invite influencers from successful campaigns to return for more experiences. That's a great way to ensure you're getting a great return. And we've done that with tourism boards where we go back to the same destination over and over and over again. And now one of them, we are living in their destination. So that, I think for them, they would say was a great investment for them. So we're on to our last main topic. How to prove your investment in social media and influencer campaigns is actually worth it. And this is one of the most contentious topics in the industry right now. And again, if you haven't taken a look at that Ad Age article from last month, please do so, and I'm happy to send it to you, because I think it does raise some important questions on what you're getting for your investment when working with a content creator, and in particular, an influencer. So first, it's important to set realistic expectations, not only on what the content creator is responsible for, like we just talked about with the question we received, but what you will offer as the brand and what your expectations are about the results. Honestly, you can't expect that every influencer relationship will be a success. There are going to be hits or misses. Sometimes something happens during a visit that means the blogger can't write what they want to, or someone gets sick, or there's bad weather and the photos stink. There's just some things are just out of everyone's control. But at the same time, when it comes to expectations, you also can't always expect immediate results or bookings. As we talked about earlier, travel is not the same as other industries like fashion. Travel is inspirational. People are inspired, they save, they plan, and sometimes they book months or years later. So working with content creators is a long-term strategy. Also, especially with blog posts, you need to let SEO or search engine optimization take effect. It can take months for well-written evergreen content to reach page 1 of Google and to start to see the effects. Currently, one of my most popular posts was about a Korean DMZ tour we took well over 3 years ago. It's on page 1 of Google for a lot of search terms about DMZ tours. It took some time to get there, but I'm selling a DMZ tour almost every day from this one blog post 3 years ago. And so trying to set expectations that are not always quick turnaround, I think, is really important. And tracking results. I could spend an entire hour or more just talking about this topic. People like to say it is hard or almost impossible to track results from a social campaign. And I disagree. There are ways to do it. And those ways are sometimes more clear than even traditional advertising. I always like to ask the question about traditional advertising of how do you track actual results from an ad in an in-flight magazine or the local issue of Time Out magazine. The printer can tell you how many issues were printed and distributed. They might be able to tell you how many subscribers a magazine has. But how do you know how many eyes saw your ad and ultimately booked with you because of it? The same goes for those mega expensive tourism board destination videos that we all see on CNN or the BBC, like Incredible India or Malaysia, Truly Asia. I think that it's hard to track the results from campaigns like that, but yet brands are willing to spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on campaigns. So how do you track results for a social campaign? So the best way to track results and to report to your higher ups is to request a trip report from the content creator. But if you want one, you have to discuss that before the trip so that the expectations are clear. You can use a unique hashtag for larger campaigns, which we've done in the past, to track the number of posts to get engagement rate from posts. Or even better, if you can offer a unique promo code or a tracking code or offer affiliate links, you can help directly track results for that campaign. These are the absolute best ways to understand what's working and what's not. But remember, gauging results by looking only at the number of likes or comments on an Instagram post is really not going to tell you what's working and where to focus your budget in the future. Try to find other ways to make the most of your investment, like asking for evergreen blog content or purchasing images or videos. One of the destinations we've worked well with in the past is the Costa Brava Tourism Board in Catalonia. We've done 2 really big campaigns for them, and that is where we are currently living. Again, I think they've gotten a good return on their original investment from our first campaign with them 3 years ago. But one of the things that they like to say, and they are one of the top tourism boards in Europe to work with as an influencer, is that they can't always guarantee direct bookings from their campaigns or an increase in tourism in the first month after a blogger campaign. But they've been working well with bloggers over 4 or 5 years now, and they have increased tourism to the region exponentially. They've really done a great job. But what they do say is that when we do get these, when we get comments or Facebook messages from people who say things like, I live in South Africa and I've decided to take my next trip to the Costa Brava because of your blog posts, I actually take a screenshot and I send it to him and he sends it to his boss. So in a lot of ways, it might not be the numbers that dictate the success of a campaign. It might be something where you just have to kind of trust your instinct, that you're working with good people, nice people, friendly people, people who feel passionate about travel, passionate about your destination, and the results will come. So what is our key takeaway here? Well, instead of a key takeaway, I just want to add a few additional thoughts that were discussed about this topic during a Facebook group discussion between a bunch of bloggers and content creators just in the last week. And it was around the topic of how brands can work with influencers. And these are the same things that we tell our consulting clients. First, if you want to make the most of your investment, share the post that the content creators create for you. Interact with them on social. Share their blog posts. It amplifies everyone's activity and reach, and a lot of brands skip this step. Second, be realistic in your outreach. If you have no budget or limited budget, don't reach out to the largest influencers out there. Find some micro influencers who can tell a great story for you, and you might be surprised. You might get a higher return on your investment. Last, to get the most out of a content creator, sometimes you just need to let them do their jobs. If you've done your due diligence and are working with the right people, often that's enough to get good results. Let them find the stories and tell those stories in a way that works best for their readers. Okay, that was a lot of information, and I managed to get that in, even with the late start. I did manage to get all of that in, and so I did want to cover at least a little bit on these three main subjects. I could teach an entire one-day workshop on this topic and go into a lot more detail about how to spot fake followers and how to track campaigns. But the final key takeaway here, with respect to influencer campaigns, is that yes, selection, budget, and results are all key components of a successful campaign. But in the end, working with content creators is more of a marathon than a sprint. If you have had one bad experience, don't run for the hills. Instead, figure out why it was a bad experience, learn from the mistakes, and try to do better in the future. Social media is not going away. Even with all of the recent Facebook scandals, I believe Facebook will survive. And well-written blog posts will continue to educate, inform, and inspire travelers. So take the time to learn how to do this right, and your budget will be well spent. So here is my email address. So the first one is Amber at Wit Media. That's our consulting company. We're happy to answer any questions about how you can work with influencers and also just general social media training questions as well. Or you can also reach out to us with Husband in Tow. If you do go to our Wit Media Facebook page, we do tend to share social media news and tips to keep you up to date. And also on witmedia.co, you can sign up for our newsletter. And also with Husband in Tow, we just worked with the Jamaican Tourism Board and just published 3 new posts that I think give a good example of a paid campaign and the kind of work that we were able to provide for them. So they're brand spanking new and haven't reached the first page of Google yet, but I think they give a good example of how to work with influencers. Is there one more? Yes, there you go. I'll turn it back over to Rachel.
Well, Amber, thank you so much for all that information. There's so much good stuff there to go through, and maybe we'll take you up on the offer of doing a day seminar on all of these.
Yeah, it would be great.
There's so much to think about. So thank you so very much for coming and sharing that expertise. Amber will be speaking at our Digital City Visitor Conference next month in London. That's on the 12th of June, which is part of the City Fair programme this year. We will be covering various digital topics on that day, one of which will be social media and influencers, which Amber will be speaking about. We're also going to be covering technology for capacity management solutions. We're going to be looking at digitisation in tours and attractions. And we're going to have a quick whip round all the latest technology that's helping our industry at the moment. So really looking forward to all of those things. Do sign up if you haven't already at cityfair.travel, the website on the screen. That conference is free to tech members of ETOA, and there is a small charge if you're not a member. So do please sign up or contact us with any questions about that. I think that wraps it up for today.
Yeah,
So
I just want to say
much.
I'm willing to stay on for another couple minutes if anyone else has any other questions. I know that we're just at the end of our time period. If you don't have any questions now, again, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer any questions we didn't get to during the session.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much, Amber. And we look forward to hearing you again in a few weeks at the Digital City Visitor Conference.
Perfect.